All right. This should be an easy one for you today. We hear about it. We see it a lot. Tack across. What do we do?
Well, the short answer is it depends, but I love hearing that as a starboard tacker because that means they're deferring me for my choice. So I can either say tack and I can keep going that way. Maybe I get a lead bow, but maybe I want to tack anyway. So it's my choice. The other option is I say cross. And often when I want to keep going, the last thing I want is to get lead bowed. And I want the option to keep going. And I'm gladly give up that little bit in order not to be stuck in somebody's dirty air or have to double tack if I want to keep going or something like that.
Mm. So that's a key point. That really, the only times that you'd let them cross is if you're pretty confident and they could pull off a lead bow attack. Then really hurt you. That's sort of the decision mode.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. The decision is, and so let's say, you lose a half a boat length in attack. Suppose you're the sailing a boat that does that. That means they've got to be at least halfway in front of you, a half a boat length in front of you. So really, if it's a full boat length loss per tack, they got to be almost crossing to pull off a lee bow.
Mm.
So usually these are little ducks, and it's great to have that option.
All right. I know you're going to have some sketches. So what can you lay this out to me in visual style?
Sure thing. Let me share my screen here. So here is your typical tack or cross. So play it through once. You know, red gives up their rights, waves their rights in order to keep going, barely lose anything, right?
We were liking going left.
Yep, might lose. In this case, they lost probably less than a half a boat length. You're still going left the way you want to go, and you've given up very little doing it. Um, but let's talk about the language here.
Mm, yeah.
This is super important. First of all, you got to be far enough out that the starboard back, if you're going to be the port tack saying tack or cross, you better say it. You can't just say it once quietly, and you can't say it late. So very early, you got to repeat yourself. So right here, you're saying, probably all the way back here, you're saying tack or cross, maybe even sooner. And when I'm doing it, if I'm that poor boat, I am looking straight down and I'm also taking my arm and I'm kind of pointing through.
Mm,
Tack or cross, and it becomes really clear and if you start crossing the same people all the time, you kind of get used to each other's arm language too.
yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
hear a noise and see my arm, I'm asking, even if it's noisy and all that stuff.
Yeah. Let me pause you there. This is a big thing. Like I'm in on boats that have multiple people, boats that don't tack quickly. Maybe you've got bodies on the rail, and
Hmm.
there's this sort of time and distance loss where the entire boat is, waiting for a decision to be made. So maybe on some of the boats that, when you're in one of these marginal tech cross situations, how do you make sure that everybody on the boat is ready for either scenario?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is and maybe we're bluffing a little bit. Maybe I really want to keep going and maybe I'll duck instead. Like I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can decide, oh, that's not a good idea to tack. But you sort of have to have that in your pocket ahead of time. So, hey, if they say tack or don't say anything at all, they have no obligation to respond. It's a courtesy. And I'm not expecting a response. I'd love to get one. I'm hopeful, but I am fully ready to do that tack instead. And the team knows that. So, hey, we're barely crossing. We'll hail tack or cross, tack or cross, tack or cross. And everybody knows, okay, if they don't respond or they say no, we're gonna do a nice tack and leave out them.
Yeah.
So everybody's ready to go. You're right. If you're caught by a surprise and you're expecting an answer, then you're kind of angry they haven't, and you do a crash tack in there, you're probably not gonna plant the lead out.
Lead bow ain't gonna work in that case. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
how about from the starboard's perspective? You have anything that shows, um, the port tacker coming in and doing its lead bow attack here? How to
Yeah, so this is what you're trying to avoid, right? This is you're sort of saying, or maybe not, maybe this is what you want, but either way, this is what it's going to look like. If they say tack or cross back here, and you say tack, or by the way, let's just go over that again, what the starboard back tacker has to say.
Hmm.
They have no obligation to respond. The rule book has very few mandatory hails, and this is certainly not one of them. So no response is the same as saying tack, in my mind, if I'm that poor tacker. But from the starboard tacker's perspective, if you get lee bowed like this, you're gonna tack because you can't just hang out there. So that's your answer. And there's nothing wrong with that if you want to go right. So there's a lot of times you're essentially taking that person's lane.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
now you're kind of free to go right unobstructed.
yeah, and ideally when you play this, you want to go right and you want to intentionally bounce them left. Maybe out
Awesome.
past Port Leon. Yeah. So
Right. Just give yourself a little more space on that poor tack. If like let's look at this. Like if you don't do that, it might look like this. You tack, instead of pinging them, you want to go right. You're like, oh, I better tack. And then, maybe you pinch them off eventually, or maybe you're now at their mercy.
hmm
Tack. And even if you tacked earlier and you're down here, now they could potentially tack on you when you go back. Much better off, flushing them out early. It's a really nice move to essentially take their lane and leave yourself options.
easy
I,
up. So on the
yeah,
rules side, I know we
yeah.
can't get too deep into it, but this is the gray zone, right? That can be problematic. Where as the starboard tacker, you're waiving your rights. Any thoughts on how you handle uh, a duck or a tack that goes wrong? What is if you're waiting and all of a sudden they do pull off a late slam dunk leave out tack that doesn't go well, and all of a sudden you're going crashing ahead to win at some point. How do you deal with the rules side of this?
Well, so there is no rule, kind of like there's no obligation to respond. The rule book has no provision for this directly. There's nothing that says if you waive your rights, then this happens. So this is purely a cultural thing in our sport that's,
Mm-hmm.
I think, practiced quite regularly and efficiently. Like it works. So I think in general, if you're just duck and your new courses, you could probably make a good argument in the protest room. That's the course I wanted to take, and I've never seen a protest on that. So, but yeah, I think you bring up another point though that suppose something goes wrong in all this, and it's a collision in the middle of it, right?
Mm.
So I can think of two things. One is that you thought you said cross, and they thought you said tack, and
Yeah. Hey,
if you
boss.
start to
Yeah.
tack, or they start to tack, you start to bear off, and you hit them.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is if you say cross, 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 and then you pull the tiller, and it's heavy wind, you couldn't get the vang out, you're trying to get it out, and all of a sudden you can't bear off, your rudder cavitates, and you kind of slam into them. And I think for the most part, I think that the starboard still is right away, and so really you're taking a little bit of a chance if you're the port tacker doing this, but it's tried and true. Like the practical side of this is, I can't think of a race day that I don't use it. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly at the start when everything's busy, but I guess my takeaway is right. It's just sort of like be vocal and make a decision sooner than later. I'm from both sides.
Be vocal, do it early, realize that it's not part of the rules, really. It's a courtesy. So, no response, unclear response. If I'm not 100% sure, the right away rules still apply. I'm still going to tack, do my lee bow if I'm that port tacker. If I'm unclear what's going on, the regular old port starboard, tacking too close, tacking to lee bow, all that still is in the game. And that happens a lot too. You're like, I couldn't quite tell what you said. So I think your answer, both your question and your answer better be very, very clear.
Yeah. And I would say, just so it is clear on both sides, it's almost rather than waiting for the port tacker to ask the question, as the starboard tacker, you dictate what wants to happen before the question's asked. So you can go to leeward and tell them to cross before they ever ask, and that way, very
Absolutely.
clear.
I've done that a lot. Like I'm the starboard tacker. They don't say anything. They're coming up. I'm like, well, I really don't want them leebowing there. And I'll just say, cross, cross, cross.
Yeah.
And I tell you, most of the time they do cross, even if they haven't asked. And almost always somebody gives you a little wave like, thank you, you know. And part of the culture in this is it's a little bit of a live and let live, right? Like, next time if you just wave somebody through, they're pretty happy. They didn't have to attack when they didn't want to go in the wrong way or do a big duck. And so you win, they win, and they're happy with you. And next time that crossing comes and it's your turn, they're more likely to say, cross, cross, cross. He let me through once, and it's all legit.
Better to make friends on the race course than enemies, for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing is I have heard from some beginner sailors, less experienced sailors, that they feel intimidated by the more experienced sailors when this happens. They're having the race of their life. They're getting the front of the top of the fleet. They're getting near the weather mark, and all of a sudden they hear tack or cross, and they feel intimidated. And the purpose, I say it all the time. I ask all the time. And I'm never trying to make them do something they don't want to do. I'm always trying to give them an option, and I'm not expecting them to give that to me. And I'm certainly not angry with them if they don't. And I'm not angry if they don't respond. I'm not expecting a response. I'm not expecting the outcome I want. I'm purely asking.
Well said. All right. Well, on that, cross. We'll see you next time.
All right.